Lyle Benjamin, the president of the Montana Grain Growers, now able to join us here on Montana Talks. Lyle, thanks for calling in this morning.
Absolutely. I'm always happy to talk about farming.
I'll bet. Yeah. Well, first off, I saw Tom Ludy had an interesting piece here for the Billings Gazette this morning. Just going over some of the numbers. Wheat is on China's 196-page list of U.S. products facing retaliatory tariffs of up to 25%. What's it like for you this week, eyeing all of this from the perspective of the Montana grain growers?
It's frankly disappointing to see this trade war unravel the way that it has. We didn't ask for this trade war. We asked for trade deals that were effective and that were largely already negotiated. They just needed ratified by Congress or signed by the president. But so it's really disappointing to see this sort of thing hit us. In economic impact, it's interesting to note, though, that the Chinese have bought very little U.S. wheat or Montana wheat since March of 2018 when the first tariffs went on. So, from a realistic standpoint, this is kind of the ceremonial or a bluff piece on the Chinese part. But we've certainly lost markets, and they're very difficult to get back. We're very saddened by the way that this is going.
Yeah, I think in this piece, Lola Raska, folks know her, longtime work with the Montana Grain Growers, made the point that or maybe it was somebody from the Wheat and Barley Committee, made the point that, hey, China isn't one of the top 5 markets for Montana wheat, but nonetheless, it can still have an impact here. But also, by and large, we already saw the hit going back to 2017, so this isn't, or 2018, so this isn't too much of a major change here. But talk about the real concern coming from Japan and with markets there.
That's a huge concern. But I was just on social media here earlier talking about the fungibility of wheat in general and how Montana wheat or Northern Plains wheat is not fungible, except for with our Canadian and Australian competitors, and we are losing market share to those markets, selling into Japan at a very high rate, just because they have an advantageous tariff rate because they are participating in TPP. Say that 3 times fast. And so every time that tariff step drops off, we lose into that market, and it becomes progressively more expensive for Japanese to buy high quality Montana or Northern Plains wheat. So it's a tough spot. We need a bilateral agreement with Japan, or we need to be in TPP.
What's kind of the reaction? I mean, how long do you anticipate this U.S.-China trade battle going on? I mean, I know the president, I think he was just quoted as talking with Larry Kudlow or somebody and saying, hey, we got one of our guys headed to China right now. We'll know in 3 or 4 weeks whether there's a change. How long do you expect this kind of entrenched U.S.-China trade battle to go on?
I like to think that I'm an optimist, and as a farmer, you kind of have to be. But my crystal ball gets awfully murky. This trade battle has been there's been so many 2 steps forward and 3 steps back on this thing that it's just hard to predict. We were in Washington D.C. visiting with Foreign Ag Service and USDA back in February, I believe. And at that time, we were kind of optimistic that we might have something wrapped up by May, and now here we are in the middle of May, and it sure doesn't look like we're getting real substantive progress. The Japanese thing, we hoped that there would be movement by June. The latest things we hear now is that maybe that timeline is moving off. Prime Minister Abe in Japan is soft pedaling that date pretty hard now, so it's really hard to say. It's the one stroke of pessimism on my farm.
Yeah, and you're out of Sunburst, right? The great town of Sunburst, Montana, right near the northern border, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
All right. Yeah. They're in near Shelby. So for those who aren't familiar with Sunburst, right down the road from Kevin. It's Kevin, not Kevin. You got it.
Yep, that's right. We're almost Canadians, eh? We farm within about a half mile of the line.
That's right. Well, I remember interviewing the Canadian grain growers president a few years ago when they were in Havre, and yeah, he's just right north of you on the other side of the border. So yeah, he's practically an American farmer too there. But speaking of Canada, when we look at President Trump and trade. And I know times are tough right now, but I remember, what was it, about a year ago, and things looked pretty tough when it comes to the trade with the U.S. and Canada and the U.S. and Mexico. And we ended up getting an agreement. The president ended up getting an agreement. In fact, Canada was kind of getting notoriously bad about taking Montana grain, taking American grain, and we'd send them the Cadillac grain, and they'd say it was the Pinto grain, I guess, to try to put it in a car's perspective. Well, and now, they were basically saying, well, you didn't send us high quality wheat when we were sending them high quality wheat. Now, thanks to that tough trade negotiation by President Trump, that basically fix was made, right? So I guess, does that leave you somewhat optimistic that the president can take an aggressive approach towards China here, or is this a different deal altogether?
Well, USMCA, which is what you're referring to there, that is a success story. We've got 90% of the fix we needed out of that. There's still a couple tweaks that are more technical within that agreement. But so President Trump absolutely did a great job on USMCA, and now that agreement is sitting in Congress's lap, and Congress needs to take action on USMCA. They need to give it an up or down vote. But USMCA is absolutely a good agreement, and it works well for U.S. Farmers particularly, and I think U.S. industry as well. This grain moves all kinds of different ways, and sometimes just a simple rail move is a good move. So USMCA really facilitates that. I also raise malt barley. 50% of Montana's malt barley goes down into Mexico and gets malted and comes back in the form of an import beer. USMCA helps address that too. It's a good agreement. President Trump has done a great job with that one.
I do got to say, hey, hats off to former Senator Max Baucus. I saw he was on an RV tour with, I think, the immediate past president of the Montana grain growers. And, we got a previous caller who was saying, we were kind of talking about how, people just so follow the party line and they wear the Democrat jersey or the Republican jersey, and it doesn't matter what happens on the field, they support that team. Got to say hats off to former Senator Baucus for getting out there and stumping on the trail in support of President Trump's negotiated U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. Good move on his part there, I thought.
Yes, Max Baucus has been a real staunch advocate for trade, and this absolutely is an American issue. It's not an R or D issue or a red or blue issue. It's about functioning markets for American products.
So you probably heard kind of my question there before we went to that last commercial break. So there were folks who kind of wanted to bail on President Trump when he was trying to get this new USMCA going and pushing the issue with Canada, with Mexico, and there were folks saying, "Oh, he's gonna risk a big trade war. It's going to be costly and harmful to farmers and ranchers." And then some said, "No, let's stand by the president. Let's get a better deal done because we all want to see a better deal." He got that done. So should we say the same thing when it comes to China? I mean, I guess what would your message be to President Trump or to folks out there who might have that question?
I guess the first comment would be to do no harm. The things that we're working for American agriculture with China have been the WTO things. We've just won a couple of major cases against China via the WTO. Again, getting back to CPTPP, that would have been a very strong counterbalance to China's ambitions and would have helped discipline their unsavory trade practices, frankly. So participation in those two things is key to us. I think it's also important to note that personalities of countries are very different, and so this negotiation between U.S., Canada, and Mexico has far different cultural implications than the negotiation with China does, and it's important to keep that in mind. There's very different issues. I think we're a lot closer together with our North American partners than maybe we are with China in cultural terms, how we approach trade, how we think about trade, and what looks like a good deal to us. So the USMCA was a pretty easy deal to get done. This China one definitely has some thornier issues to deal with, and it's going to be, frankly, a lot harder to get wrapped up. But I would just urge to use all the tools that we have, and some of those are very precision tools like WTO and CP, TPP.
A couple of minutes left here before we run out of time, but I think Tom Ludy kind of referenced this in his piece earlier this morning too, which is, there was kind of a populist push on the left and on the right, whether it was, even Hillary Clinton and the Elizabeth Warrens of the world came against some of the trade deals like TPP. And then on the right, even some of the Republicans were against TPP. So there was a populism against some of these multilateral trade deals. Given that, situation that doesn't seem to have changed too much heading into 2020, how do you think farmers should look to advance trade agreements in light of that populist push against these multilateral deals?
That's a good question. I think the important thing is for farmers to be informed and engaged on these topics, and be able to share the story that we have. Montana is an export farm state. We export about 80% of what we grow here. Most of it goes to the Pacific Rim, so it's vital for us to have those open markets. The remaining 20% goes to domestic markets, and again, a lot of it's going out of state. It's staying within the U.S., but it's going out of state. So it's, if Montana had to eat all of the wheat that we produce, each grower or each person in the state would have to eat about 40 loaves of bread a day. So we can't eat our way through this problem. We need to have trade deals. We need to have functioning free markets that acknowledge the quality and value of Montana wheat. That's very important going forward.
Huge part of our economy, that's for sure. Well, less than a minute to go. Lyle Benjamin, president of the Montana Grain Growers. Anything else you want to tell folks across Montana?
Just keep eating wheat. I appreciate everybody having a sandwich at lunch.
Well, it's funny. I've been on this. I did this diet that was kind of an ideal protein-based diet. It was the Billings last diet. But anyway, cool deal. But even after I got off the diet, even they said, hey, have some good whole grain bread. Integrate that whole grain wheat back into your diet. It's good for you, and you need the fiber and everything else that comes with it. So to my protein fans out there too, hey, you're going to need some good Montana wheat too.
Yep, and if you don't like bread, you can always eat a cinnamon roll. It has wheat in it as well.
There you go. All right, Lyle. Well, we'll have to meet you for a cinnamon roll in Shelby one of these days. Thanks for being with us.
Very good. We'll look forward to it.
All righty.